Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we are diving into a right that's, well, it's pretty much baked into the American identity. But man, does it spark more debate than almost anything else. Free speech.
And you know, this quote right here, it just perfectly captures our modern world, doesn't it? Technology has basically given every single one of us a global stage, which makes understanding the power and the rules of speech more critical than ever before.
So before we even touch the Constitution, we've got to get on the same page about a fundamental truth. Words have immense power. I mean, they can build entire societies, but they can also tear them right down.
And in the eyes of the law, and let's be honest, in our everyday lives, some words aren't just speech. They're what lawyers call verbal acts. They actually change reality. Think about a judge slamming a gavel and saying, "I sentence you to 5 years," or a couple at the altar saying, "I do." Those words have immediate, very real consequences.
Okay, so keeping that incredible tower in mind, how does the U.S. Constitution handle it? Well, it all kicks off with one of the most famous sentences in American law, the First Amendment.
Right. This is the phrase pretty much everyone recognizes. But what's the big idea behind it? I mean, why did the founders think protecting speech was so absolutely essential?
Well, it's about so much more than just being able to say whatever pops into your head. It's really a formula for a functioning society. You've got this marketplace of ideas where the truth can hopefully win out. You need it so citizens can actually govern themselves. It's about letting individuals flourish, and crucially, it's a check on power.
But, and this is a big but, this freedom isn't absolute, not even close. Over the last couple of centuries, the Supreme Court has had to draw some very important, and often very controversial, lines in the sand. So let's look at a few landmark cases to see how these rules really took shape.
First up, let's bust a huge myth. We've all heard that you can't shout fire in a crowded theater, right? Well, the modern legal standard for what you actually can't say comes from a pretty surprising place, a Supreme Court case that involved a Ku Klux Klan rally.
And this case gave us the standard we still use today, the Brandenburg test. Basically, it says that speech, even deeply hateful speech, is protected unless it's intended to incite imminent lawless action and is actually likely to do it. The keywords there are imminent and likely, and let me tell you that is an incredibly high bar for the government to clear.
Okay, so what about speech in our schools? This next case is a big one for students' rights. It involved a few students wearing black armbands to protest the Vietnam War.
And the court's ruling here was crystal clear. Schools can't just silence students because they're afraid a disruption might happen. This is a principle that is still at the absolute center of debates on college campuses all across the country today.
All right, let's jump way forward to a very recent case. This one was about a web designer who, because of her religious beliefs, didn't want to create wedding websites for same-sex couples, which would have put her at odds with the state anti-discrimination law.
Now, the court ended up ruling that this wasn't really about a right to discriminate, but about something called compelled speech. The core idea here is that the government cannot force you to create a message that goes against your beliefs. It basically affirmed that free speech also includes the freedom not to speak.
So these court cases, they lead us directly into the intense debates that are playing out all around us today. And if you look closely, at the heart of these conflicts, you'll almost always find a clash of two very deeply held fears.
And this really gets to the central tension of it all. On one side, you have this fear that unchecked speech causes real, tangible harm, especially to vulnerable communities. But on the other side, there's a deep fear that any attempt to curb that speech will inevitably lead to censorship and the silencing of dissenting or traditional beliefs.
This tension, this push and pull, it brings us to a really fascinating philosophical puzzle that's at the very core of the entire free speech debate.
This is known as the paradox of tolerance, and it asks a really powerful question. If a truly tolerant society tolerates everything, including the very voices of intolerance, will that society eventually be destroyed by the same people it tolerated?
Now, the traditional American constitutional answer has been to pretty much reject this paradox. The bet, and it is a bet, is that the best remedy for bad or hateful ideas isn't censorship. It's more speech, it's open debate, and it's trusting in the resilience of democratic values. So this is the big question we're all left with. In an age where literally everyone has a megaphone, how do you protect an open society without giving a platform to those who would use that very openness to tear the whole thing down? That, right there, is the challenge for all of us.